once were contenders, now are befriended. Oh, let's celebrate lasses and lads. Where once were contenders, now are befrienders. Let's celebrate lasses, celebrate lasses, celebrate lasses, celebrate lasses.
What's going on?
My foot is stuck.
Concentrate, son.
Braid.
What madness is this?
I think they're starting to get suspicious.
My nose.
There! Interlopers!
Well, hello. Welcome to the Cellar. We've got several interesting topics tonight, so I'll just jump right in. As far as movies go, I feel the biggest problem with existing movies is their injection of constant silly humor. Instead, I think a D&D movie needs a Conan or Excalibur seriousness to it. Yes, D&D can be silly at times with players, but they went way overboard on it. Thoughts? Well, I will admit that the wisecracking didn't go down, in my opinion, didn't go down well in the D&D movie. Now, I don't believe that either Conan or Excalibur had a lot of seriousness to it on its face. Let's face it. I just absolutely do not like Excalibur because of the stainless steel or chrome armor. That's just the silliest damn thing I've ever seen. I don't care if it's a fantasy tale or whatever. Nah. You can either be a fantasy tale or you can be a retelling of the history that might have inspired the tale, but I don't like him. And come on. Tell me that when you saw Wilt Chamberlain in the Conan movie, skinny arms, skinny legs, weird hat, and that big damn weapon that he didn't look strong enough to wield, you didn't snicker. Come on. When I saw the two big weightlifters, come on, man. Now, granted, you can choose to look, have your snicker, keep going, okay, and go on. But it's really hard to forget those, particularly those three faces, and be serious about it. However, having said that, your point is valid. Whether or not we'll ever see a serious D&D inspired movie, I couldn't say. Probably not. It would take too much money, too much of a risk, having seen the first one not do so well. A different director and a different cast. It could be done. Will it be done? I doubt it. Would I like to see it done? Oh, hell yes. I just don't think it will. But I do agree with the original premise that, yeah, a couple of funny asides are fine. I think they went overboard a little, and how many is too many, I couldn't tell you. But it wasn't serious enough often enough to overcome the silliness. However, it's coming on Netflix this week, and I'm going to watch it again. Having paid for it at the theater, I'll watch it again. See what I might have snoozed through. I know that D&D evolved from tabletop gaming. And it's funny. The original three little books had rules for miniatures. In your experience, when players attained high level and created their own domains, such as in 2024's D&D DM's Guide, well, we've been doing that long before 2024's DM's Guide, but yes, I get your point. Was there ever a time when D&D devolved back into a tabletop game? Well, I take exception with the word devolved. But yes, there were occasions when, in Lake Geneva, it was chainmail because we didn't have enormous armies. However, as more and more people got into doing this and taking their personal retainers into battle and what have you, we saw this development, perceived a need for some rules, and so that's when Swords and Spells was written by Gary, and spells and ranges and effects and what have you were applied on a tabletop, as well as much, much larger armies or larger bodies of troops. The book never sold all that well, so I can't imagine that it was all that good. I just edited it. I wrote none of it. I just made sure it was spelled right and made sense when you read the sentence. And some of the sentences were pretty damn hard to figure out what they were supposed to be saying. Oh, no, I'm not ashamed of it. I just don't look at it as my greatest accomplishment at TSR. But yeah, if we could, put together a plausible reason, or somebody would say, okay, there's an army of orcs and goblins invading from the south, bring out your retainers and, or large mob or, whatever, bring out your retainers and we'll fight them off. Yeah, it happened a couple of times. There's a campaign here in Ohio that's been going on for years. I don't know if it still is. It was a couple of years ago, and it had been going on for years when I got here in 76. Or, 81. A little off there. It had been going on, and they had a rule book this big of damn near single-spaced, single-sided rules. And they did it because they created an entire fantasy world for the purpose of having big battles. Could they have used Swords and Spells? Possibly, but they started before Swords and Spells came out, or roughly at the same time, and so they found their happy spot and went with it. I played it in a couple of years. It was one year we had 6 tables with about 20, 22 players. One side or the other, good, evil, whatever. It was great. Did your miniatures ever turn back into armies and fight en masse? Yes, in that we did it a couple of times. It was an excuse to set up a chainmail battle, which we all like to play too. So it was convenient. Wondering if you might be able to discuss the thief class and what the intention was behind this class. As far as I know, it was the first class to introduce skills. Well, we'll dispute that in a minute. And I've read that a skill like hide in shadows or move silently are often interpreted like these supernatural abilities. Well, they weren't by us. We couldn't help what people morphed it into. Being able to literally hide in a shadow or move absolutely silently, would these skills even be possible for a non-thief to use? Or are they supposed to represent having a better skill at stealth than the average person? Yes. Let's use a popular recent great fantasy program, Game of Thrones, and look what Arya learned in her training and her teaching. She could do things, disguise, stuff like that. Training. I'm sure some of these questions have been brought up before, but I haven't found any videos where you really go into depth on the intentions behind the thief. On a side note, thieves are my favorite class, but I can never keep one alive past 4th level or so. It's because he gets greedy. I found a piece of information when I was. I actually went back and looked back at the thief, which is now called the rogue, which is just dumber than shit. But what's the ending? They don't want to offend anybody. Getting one past fourth level is not the hard part. Thinking that you can do something you can't is the hard part. I saw thieves as more useful as an NPC. Low-level thieves better just be around picking pockets in the marketplace, and they better be good at it. If you're going to assume something like a thief at first level, you either got to assume some small amount of sleight of hand skills or distraction skills to even try to become an adventuring thief. All right? A band of adventurers walking by you clamped in the stocks for stealing eggs is not likely to think that you might be handy in their upcoming adventures. A mix of burglar, treasure hunter, and explorer, you are the epitome of an adventurer. In addition to improving your agility and stealth, you gain abilities. Well, they could have left those last three words off. Just as so many people have taken it to mean that when a fighter goes up a level, he has to go off and train in in specialized schools. Or a magician has to withdraw to the magic user, has to withdraw to the wilderness to bone up on some stuff. Or a cleric has to go, be with the monks in the monastery for a while to get his equilibrium back. A thief could go learn skills. Now, I'm not using the word skills like the current issues or iterations of D&D use skills and abilities. I would say they would go learn knacks. They have a knack for this or a knack for that, and learn how to do it better, how to blend into the shadows, how to move silently. Those can be learned. They don't have to be some magical grant. And who's going to grant them? Loki? Yes, they're better than the average person at doing those things that they're good at. I do not see any more abilities solely because you're a higher level thief as being worthwhile. As you safely disarm trap after trap and pick lock after lock, you should be noting these things and increasing your skills and make a case for pluses. And the DM should be watching it and grant those pluses. Before there were thieves, our thief in Carbondale was a hobbit who had very good die rolls, picking locks and finding traps, and so I gave him more and more skills and abilities in those areas based on his previous success. And so he was the lock picker, the trap finder, the trap disarmer. Simply fell to him because he had high dex. And, I don't remember all of his stats, but high dex he had like a 17 or 18 dex. Because back then, you rolled in the order of your stats. No swapping back and forth crap. You played what you rolled. That was role playing. Play what you got. The intentions were, I believe, because that was all done prior. That was all decided and shoved into the canon in, that must have been in strategic review, as I recall. And that's because I can't think of a nicer way to say it. They were tossing some meat to the ravening pack. Here, Here, have this. Because the people that at DSR couldn't keep up with the evolution of the game. That's why Gary brought in more people to try and keep a lid on it and keep it manageable. I don't believe anything beyond that is valid. That's because I don't like capital S skills and capital A abilities the way they're done in the later editions. Personal choice. But that's why. Okay, new topic. Here in jolly old England, a copy of Dragon Magazine #1 sold at an auction in Cockermouth in the Lake District for £1,500. Quite remarkable. Keep up the good work. Well, unfortunately, I think it's going to be a long time for anything that I've done since to be scarce enough to draw that kind of money. I'll resist the overwhelming urge to comment on that town's name. Okay, I'm going to read through this all the way. It's from Italy. And it's for an Italian-speaking, for an Italian-born person, this is excellently good English. However, as an editor, but I respect the hell out of anybody that learns more than one language and becomes fluent in it. Anyway, I wonder what's your way as to weapon and monster damage dice. Do they do D6s with slight variation for more power or weakness, namely a +1 or a -1, with regards to creatures, or do you use D4 to D10 scale from dagger to two-handed ones or monster attacks? I confess that while the use of many differently shaped dice is more fun, there's a wisdom and playability in conceiving damage amount in a restricted range of values, as by using only the D6, that I feel fits better with the abstraction of combat and combat parameters. Hit points first. The less you go into discriminating this and that beforehand, weapon length, weight, just to assign weapons different damage ranges, the more you let the D6 and emergent narrative tell their truth, so that you have a dagger as lethal as a sword, or an owlbear claw, or a dragon tail. 1 is simply poor damage, and 6 is a potentially killing blow, regardless of what made it. Thanks for your time and meeting with us every Saturday. Okay. I use what is specified in either the monster manual or the stats I wrote up or whatever, because every monster again being defined as anything not a player character, every monster, their hit point damage is usually pretty apparent from the range that is given as their potential. 6 to 36, 6 exciters. Okay, I build monsters and create their stats by consulting average of various dice. That's how I determine, as you can ask anybody that plays on my wheel, that's how I determine damage when you screw up. If the monsters are capable of 2 to 12, that's a dead indication right there, 2d6s. And when they hit the characters, as we're determining hits and misses, that's what I roll. Having 36 hit points and only rolling d6s to whittle those down is going to take, let's see, 6, 3.5, 11 or 12 rolls on average And that'll make for a long and tedious combat, in my opinion. If your system is what you like and it works for you and your players, that's swell. But that's not the way I've ever done it. If you have a variable chance of inflicting damage, well, so does the other side. Monster, bad guy, whatever. That's the way I like to do it. Look at their damage range and figure out. 2 to 13, 3 to 13 is 2d6 plus 1. You can always bring it back to one of the solids. And that's the way I like to do it. But hey, somebody's watching and listening to my silliness in Italy. Ciao. Makes his video at 4:20, huh? Lol. Not surprised at all. No. My alarm, my reminder alarm, goes off at 4:20 p.m. Thursday afternoon. I'm talking to you now on late Thursday night or very early Friday morning when I actually record them. It's just a reminder to me to clear my deck, go look at the comments, print out the ones I'm going to use, and then I put them aside and I go on with sometimes I print them out an hour beforehand. Sometimes, like today, I printed them out at 4 o'clock. And that was over 8 hours ago. So, now, am I baked when I do these? You decide. I was a teenager in the early 80s. What did kids do in the 80s other than playing RPGs? Mostly they went to the mall and walked around looking at each other. Well, okay. They were also out sneaking beers behind somebody's garage and sneaking smokes out of somebody's mother's purse or whatever. And they might have been playing pinball or shooting pool. You can tell where I hung out when I was a kid, but mine was in the 60s. We didn't have video game arcades. If it was an arcade was someplace that had one or two pool tables and 3 or 4 pinball machines, and let young people come in. Anyway. Yeah, isn't it grand that they found something so much better to do? I think it's just grand. Okay, now here comes an interesting point, and there may be many solutions to that, and you have to find one that works for you and your group. What to do with a missing player's PC? I recently heard some advice on dealing with absent players. One piece that stuck out was to continue playing the campaign if at all possible. Keeping a group together means playing on schedule. Also, FOMO, which I had to look up, fear of missing out, may well prioritize game night for the absentee. All right, maybe FOMO's working, but maybe there's really legitimate reasons that you have to miss game night. Family issues being one. Needing to work that night and do some overtime. There can be very rational reasons for not making it. Keeping the group alive is a good thing. We never had that problem at Lake Geneva because we all had multiple characters. All right, and we had a stable, and so we'd see where on the world map that where our world map was just a giant continent, what later became Greyhawk, where the action was taking place and who, if any, was available. And if we had somebody in our stable that wasn't committed over here and wasn't committed over there and another one that wasn't committed over there, no matter where the adventure was, we could bring out one that wasn't committed. And that's how we got around that. Now, what I found in Carbondale was an absolutely rabid group of players who hardly ever missed a game and would go to great lengths to bribe me not to play during the quarter breaks because they knew I lived down there. And some guys didn't go home during the quarter. But for the rest of them, don't, please don't. And so we didn't generally because the breaks weren't that long anyway. And then we went to semesters, and so they went away. But what did happen early in the forming and the beginnings of the campaign, if somebody couldn't make it, they didn't want their player character to miss out on experience and gold and, and whatever. And so they would ask one of the other players in the group whom they trusted implicitly if they would run them as a PC, as an NPC. And we did that quite a lot. And nobody's PC died in that role, so it never came up that you didn't play him well enough. That's the way we handled it. If you have players in your group who trust each other well enough, that's an easy solution. Particularly if they're a vital member of the team. Your thief/rogue, or some other specialist who was really important to the group, the only one possessing real good skills in whatever area, might have been your cleric with all the healing. Might have been. All right? And if the players can make that, agree to do that, problem solved. Here again, you get into the big conundrum in a campaign, and that is a valid, unchanging timeline. When did something happen? The DM's the one that's got to keep track of how much time has elapsed. DM has to do it anyway for training, healing, etc., all that kind of crap. That's one way. But what to do with the absentees PC, here and after referred to as ABPC, treat the ABPC an NPC, then catch up the player in the next session. Yeah, that's kind of what I just rambled off on too. Someone has to agree to run it and run it conscientiously and as best they can. And not as a puppet that's a meat sack out in front of the group taking the arrows. Or, more interestingly, DM relays in a letter the catch-up for the main campaign, spiced up with a minor adventure explanation of the PC's absence, that engages player in a low-risk encounter with a fun reward that may even link back into the main story. The letter eliminates the time-sucking need to catch up the player virtually at the next session. Huh. What do you mean time-sucking? It's not as the DM, it's not your job to catch them up. It's not like you have to write your murder hobo gazette for them. They should have the player who played their character as an NPC fill them up entirely. There again, the trust issue comes in. Can you, the person that you're willing to loan your character to for obvious reasons, going to fill you in completely? If you got a group that backstabs and doesn't do, play right, well, but it's been my experience that most people play neutral or neutral good or good player characters. We're wired for it. That would seem to indicate that we're basically wired for it too. No, I wouldn't make them go do something else. They were just gone. They weren't there. Now, if you're stuck in a dungeon and when the night ends, obviously somebody's got to play that character as an NPC, or you abandon them, leave them, and they die. Now, if that's the basic rule of your campaign, there's another incentive not to miss. But you have to be flexible enough for a legitimate reason to miss a game. You know, your significant other has a baby. Your cat has kittens. Whatever, there's many reasons. I believe as a DM, if you don't have some slack for those kind of reasons, I think you want to be a dictator. Now, how do I deal with absent players in my time DMing? Well, that's how I did it. And how will you contend with the same in your upcoming library school games? Well, I predict that when we've decided that we're going to make this an after-school activity so that we can continue it into the summer. So, what I am proposing for the beginning, because I'll be running most of those early games, is that we do short one-offs to get familiar with the campaign or with the mechanics, rolling dice, initiative, those are the basic things. Some easy cream puff adventures. So it won't make a lot of difference if they're not there for that, except that the player won't get that that knowledge or that experience. But as far as the games the way I see running it, we're going to be a core of adventurers, and we will go do things. Now, it again, if I get 5 people that want to play, or if I get 12 people that want to play, it's going to make a difference. And I can't say that, how, until if and when that happens. But again, we can work around it. There's going to be dropouts. Okay, what happens? Well, Sally doesn't like playing anymore. She gave it up. Okay, we'll go on with what we got. Your 12 might whittle down to 6 or 7, but they'll be the ones that are hardcore and want to play all the time. Look for those, the ones that stay the course. Okay. When you co-founded Eldritch Enterprises in 2010, I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, yeah, I think that's about right. What were your ambitions for the company, and please tell us how you got involved? Were you getting back into TTRPGs, or were you contacted out of the blue by Chris, Jim, or Frank? I went back into the game industry, role-playing industry, this part of the game-playing industry, in 2006 when I agreed to go to the Gen Con auction as a guest auctioneer. Prior to that point, the only people that even knew I was alive were the people on the Age of Wonders forums, because I'd been writing there and creating scenarios and creating races and stuff like that. I don't code. Somebody would say, I want to do this, okay, and I'd write up the backstory, and then they'd code it to make it work. And I realized when I was introduced that first time, and I got this enormous, unexpected ovation, that, oh, okay, maybe. And for a while, one of the co-founders and I were close friends, and had lots of ideas. We bounced off each other. And those were blue sky talks. That was Frank and I. Jim Ward and I have been friends since days at TSR. I met Chris Clark 8 or 9, maybe 7. And I realized, this is the dude behind Inner City Games. He's got a gazillion games out, and they're all weird and fun. And we felt we had a synergy. And we felt that we all had some more good stuff inside. Well, Chris never slowed down. And Jim never really slowed down. I guess it was Frank and I decided, okay, what the hell. And so we decided to form a company. Now, didn't quite turn out in the incorporation papers until afterwards that it wasn't quite the company I thought it was going to be. We thought we were all going to just write stuff, edit each other's work, get artists, and publish wonderful adventures, modules. And didn't work out that way. Some of us had a lot of good ideas. And one of us was as slow as a hound shit in a peach pit. One of us thought we ought to be putting out a product every month. And Chris and I said, no, that's not why. We got agreed to be involved in this. That's like our job. Chris already had a full thing with Inner City, and I was retired. And, I was just retiring. And anyway, and then when all was said and done and discovered, and who controlled what, 3 of us were quite disappointed because the 4th one apparently didn't feel that any of us should publish in numbers any more than he did. And as I say, he was as slow as a glacial melt when it came to producing stuff. Now, they were pretty damn well written, I'll grant you, but slow. And so I have 6 or 7 that I wrote while I was at Eldritch that have never been published. That's how slow. Now, I'm no longer friends with that individual. I still love Chris Clark to death, and of course, Jim has passed. What did we expect to do? Well, we thought we'd write some good adventures and prove that the old school guys weren't dead. That, we could still do it. Do stuff in the quality of some of the great TSR adventures. Our blue sky pipe dreams were that we could make a very, very strong contribution to the old school. Revival, Renaissance, whatever the hell. It was just a renewed interest in the way we used to play. Fancy name. What do you think the place in and effect upon the OSR and the world of tabletop RPGs in general, Eldritch Enterprises had in its time and has today? Well, apparently not a hell of a lot. I own all my work, and I could probably, in fact, I'm considering strongly republishing, rewriting, and combining Snake Riders of the Arredondo with a sequel that I wrote that never got published, and putting it out as a big, much bigger adventure. I don't know. I think that Chris and Jim and I wrote a great trilogy, a great sci-fi trilogy, what we called the Dark series. Dark Visitor, Dark Colony, Dark Planet, and I couldn't tell you if that's the right order. that I got roped into, but eventually enjoyed very much writing half of the third installment. Chris wrote the other half, the sci-fi techie stuff, and I wrote all about the planet and things. And we had a good time doing that. And sadly, we weren't together long enough to get it out into full distribution with that third volume. Now, I have a couple of hardbounds of all three volumes that I got through drive-through using up my credits. So I have a couple of very, very rare books. But I would like to see that get reprinted. I felt we did a very good job. A very good job. And I'm not a sci-fi guy, certainly not a sci-fi writer, but I got to approach it from my point of view and had a good time doing it. And we did a couple of firsts in sci-fi writing and adventure writing. I created a sentient planet. The planet being ridiculed with a certain type of element, not unlike silicon, but much more. Anyway, the big energy probes that were sent off into the planet by the visiting explorer ships set off a piezoelectric reaction that started clicking all through these veins of this mineral that literally they were everywhere on the planet. And so the planet began to learn, and it tried to interact with the player characters. And I had a great time doing it, and Chris and Jim were real excited. Unfortunately, one person's ego got in the way, and we were never able to get up to speed like I thought we would. All right, I've got a few questions for you. In your personal view, how has the role of the Dungeon Master evolved since the early days of D&D? And what advice would you give to new DMs trying to create immersive campaigns nowadays? And with all the digital tools and virtual tabletop platforms gaining popularity, I'm curious about your thoughts on the future of D&D in terms of gameplay and community building. Do you think those tech advancements enhance or detract from the traditional tabletop experience? Okay. I've never felt that any of that was necessary. Call me a purist, call me a stick in the mud, I don't care, but I believe in theater of the mind. Okay, that's what I believe in. I don't need a virtual map in front of me. As a player, you had to draw your own maps to figure out where you were and keep track of where you were, so you didn't end up hopelessly lost and running off into the wilderness. I don't think that's a problem. That's not an undue burden on the players now. The digital tools, oh fine, go generate a name. I don't believe in digitally generated monsters. I've always believed that a monster has to be explainable. Even if it's in a very basic form, it has to be explainable, particularly if it's not a magically augmented one. Now, it could have been created with magic long, long ago. Orcs, I guess. But I never needed that. How to be immersive? Learn to be a storyteller. If you aren't a storyteller, you're not going to create an immersive campaign. You want to learn how to be a better storyteller? Go buy 2 or 3 sets of story dice. I've preached this before. Put them all in a bag, reach in blind, pull out 3 or 4, drop them on the table, and make up an adventure hook on what those story dice have on their faces. This will teach you to be nimble, because if you are not nimble, your players will literally dance around you. If you put something in the dungeon, you want to know everything you know about it in advance. Don't put in half-ass, half-created crap, because they'll riddle you right off the bat. Now, that's not to say that somebody's not going to come up with a question like, oh, shit, let me think on that a second. Okay, we can't possibly foresee it all. Can't possibly foresee it all. All right, we'll go on with this. How would you incorporate adventures where player or law enforcement agents in Waterdeep tasked with apprehending rogue magic users and creators of rogue magical items used for nefarious reasons? It'd be like being a Texas Ranger, DEI, FBI, CIA, a special agent in the city of Waterdeep. That sounds like a blast and would give a whole new twist to adventuring. It would look something like special agents in Waterdeep are tasked with going after the Shadow Syndicate, an organization used rogue magic. Fine. No, I'm not familiar. I don't know the details of Waterdeep. I've heard the word. Any environment you choose is great, because your environment shapes the adventure. Got them in the water, under the water, on the water, what? Okay? You have to think these things through in advance. That's my advice to new DMs. Know your creations, up one side and down the other. And they'll still hit you with a question you don't have a ready answer for. And that's where the story dice came into effect, because you've just learned how to wing it a little bit, using those regularly until you feel pretty good about it. And so, whoop, you wing it. Don't wing it so far that it ruins everything else you had prepared, but wing it. You're not breaking any rules. There are no rules in that regard. And if you want to run a campaign where you're running around assassinating bad guys and stuff like that, okay. That's your bag. That's okay. You can do that in straight up D&D. Oh, when I was looking up thieves and rogues, I saw perhaps the third or fourth stupidest character class in the later editions, the investigator. So he's going to get special skills. He'd have to. Anybody can investigate. To be a player character class? What a joke. Recognize an old friend in the opening. Hadn't seen Scott in literal decades. It was great to see him and Castle Perilous still going strong. I was part of that early crowd who hung around that store when it first opened. It was also good to hear that once reconnected, Tramp seemed enthusiastic to return to the gaming spotlight. No, Tramp didn't want the spotlight. Tramp wanted an outlet for his art to be appreciated. Mild correction. Sorry that cancer took him before I could do that. Thanks for all those weekly visits to your cellar. I'm glad to hear you got a store like that down there. When I was down there, there was a store. Well, there was a place over in Murfreesboro, but that was a drive, and if you didn't have a car, you were screwed. There was a store at the head of the main drag as you were coming from the campus. And I can't remember the main drag, even though I managed the pinball arcade on it for over a year. Anyway, the main drag. And it was kind of across from the last bit of the campus and across the street. And I believe I talked them into ordering some paint testers. That's what was available in the 1970s. 73, yeah. 74 maybe. Yeah, it would have been 74. And some brushes. And then I later, after I saw them, I talked them into ordering a bunch of Duke Seafried Heritage Models dwarves. I had 40-piece, 40-man units of dwarves figures. And the guy in Murfreesboro, the store over there, I could get the only gaming magazine that was out at the time. Well, the only one that was available in the Midwest at the time. I won't get into all that. But he had Humbrol paints. And so I bought a lot of Humbrol paints over there. But that was it. We didn't have a game store. Nobody sold games. So I'm glad he's still down there too. Ovaltine. I think that was just slightly before my time. We had powdered instant breakfast. Oh God, yeah. Had to be mighty hungry. And Tang. The astronauts drank Tang, you know. Yes. Just to prove I have no pride or shame, I'll reveal that I used to sit on the couch watching Captain Kangaroo, dipping my finger into the jar of Tang and eating it like that. Was also a fan of Crusader Rabbit and Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse. See, I remember Crusader Rabbit. I don't remember Courageous Cat and Minute Mouse. Gee, they weren't trying too hard to get away from Mickey, were they? Ovaltine. I guess you must never have seen the movie The Christmas Story with the Red Ryder BB gun, because it's the Ovaltine people that are sending out today's code on the decoder ring that Ralphie sent away for in the mail, and the message at the end of the show, the high drama, drink more Ovaltine, you know. So I guess you never saw that. So if you're that young, why not? Because it's been on TBS runs it all day long on Thanksgiving. Watch it. It's hilarious. It really is. And you'll know more about Ovaltine. Yeah, we didn't have Tang at our house. We didn't have it at our house. My mother didn't want to have it at our house. We did have a lot of Kool-Aid. And we made Kool-Aid differently than the directions. 1 gallon of water, 2 packets of Kool-Aid, 1 cup of sugar, and a splash of lemon juice made a damn fine soft drink. And I grew up, until I was out and had a motorcycle and then a car and whatever, and was out buying my own soft drinks or, whatever. I drank Kool-Aid. And when Cheryl and I were first married, we drank the hell out of Kool-Aid because it was inexpensive. And it tasted okay. Referring to your comment about women playing games, women definitely bring a different element to the table. Yes. There's a lady that plays in our game who is a contract lawyer by profession. She is deviously smart and crafty, and certainly keeps me on my toes. She tends to find solutions to obstacles that I place in front of the party that I never considered. Yes, and I love it when my group goes, well, what? And I gotta think on my feet, because I had never thought of that. She is one of the best role players I ever played with, and she's made me a better DM in part to her different approach in problem solving. The game is definitely more enjoyable with her at the table. That's why when I go to cons and I see the sign-up sheets, I am always delighted if I see one or more feminine names. I'm always delighted because I know I'm going to have to be on my toes, because they're going to think stone me. Men and women think differently. Nurture, nature, I don't know. I just observe. And living as long as I have so far, I've observed that they don't think the same. Not going to go any further than that, just state the obvious. More enjoyable at the table? Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. So, my son and I made a pilgrimage to a not-so-local game store just to have a look around and see what they were up to. There was a fairly decent selection of more recent RPG manuals, including the latest D&D and Pathfinder books. I was moderately tempted to buy one just to read through it and see how the new people approach the game. In the end, I overcame that temptation and just bought a couple of new paintbrushes. I should know this. But do you investigate other systems? Why or why not? In my case, it's mostly a case of being practical, knowing that my resources are limited and I'm unlikely to actually use any new system. Well, there's one of the reasons that I don't delve into other systems willy-nilly as they come out, because I'm probably not going to use it anyway. However, there have been recent exceptions. Mahakitl. Somebody said, hey, check this out. I think it's cool, and this is it was given to me as a present. Wow, what a great rule system. Wow. Same thing about Shadow Dark. I kept hearing about it, so somebody happened to loan me a copy. Because, hey, I'm not living in a lap of luxury either. I can't afford to buy every new game that comes out. A lot of them are crap. And so I read it, and I said, yes, what I have heard about it has merit. If you want to know about a game, buy a PDF. Now, some producers are going to scream at that, but hey, if they're not willing to pay $40 for the book, but they're willing to pay $7 for the PDF, sell the PDF. You've already set the type and the galleys and the gutters and everything all nice and clean to print the book. Print the PDFs, easy peasy, and it's free money. And it's a cheap way to try and to look at new systems. Buy the PDF. PDFs have a wonderful service. They don't take up a ton of room on the ones that you're disappointed in and decide not to play. Buy the PDF. Yeah. It might. I don't expect people. I don't encourage people to spend beyond their means and buy every game system out there just because it's there. No. All right, we're going to wrap up with a subject near and dear to my heart. Paintball. The days of the mighty Nailspot bolt-action pistol. Now, this person knows his paintball because this was the weapon first used. Now, the Nailspot bolt-action pistol has an interesting history. It was developed for two things: marking trees and marking cows. It was a gelatin ball full of paint, and there were several colors available. So if you were going through your woods looking at what you're going to cut down this year for firewood or whatever, you just went through and you marked the ones for later. Same thing with the cows. Keepers, sellers, whatever. Now, two or more guys, and again, we're different, so you know it was two guys that decided to shoot them at each other. The original paintball was nothing like what you see today or on TV. The Nailspot was a bolt-action, CO2-powered, single-shot paintball gun. That was what the Nailspot company sold them for. The Nailspot company made a lot of money when paintball took off. And then other people came in, and now they've got stuff that's got an air tank slung on your back and shoots 600 rounds a minute. No. I prefer the old days. Much as if I have to be a fighter, I'd much rather be in the woods in North America with my trusty long rifle than back in Vietnam looking at AK-47s. So anyway, when I got involved with the paintball franchise here locally, a couple of guys, and we started advertising. Originally, paintball was advertised as a team building exercise. 2 departments could come out, and we did it in the middle of the week, or we'd do it a lot of the times. It became weekends, but it was a team building exercise. The original paintball was 6, 8, 10, 11, 12 people, individuals, dropped off around the perimeter of the woods at equal distances. And then the game was to take out as many of the other players before you got taken out. With all the players wore an armband, and you collected armbands. Better than ears, I guess. And the guy who got the most, or lasted the longest, was declared the winner. It was called the survival game. It was about bushcraft, crawling on your belly through the thickets and popping somebody like you were hunting. The survival game. And eventually it became bastardized into paintball. But what we did, those of us, there was 2, 3 or 4 other younger guys than me that were friends of the 2 owners that were peripherally involved. I don't think they were paid. They were just there having a good time. And we served as referees. And but more fun is a couple, 3 guys didn't show up on one of the teams, and it was one of these team versus team challenge things. A couple of us guys would fill in for whichever team needed some players. Now, we had taken the Nell spot, and we had changed the magazines to hold 7 more shots. We used Garcia Vega cigar tubes, fit right inside that magazine. And so now we had 7 more shots, which the CO2 would last through. I mean, no point in putting in extra bullets if you don't have any air. As it was, the distinctive sound of the psh, or it's actually more of a pop, that somebody's changing gas was a good way to have somebody run up on you and plug you. In any event, we wore goggles and, safety goggles, and tended to wear clothes. We didn't give a shit about getting splattered with paint. And then our secret weapon was, those of us that worked there, we would get the paintballs in great huge boxes, 3,000 balls at a time. And so we'd go through them and we'd get all the most perfectly round ones. Because, hey, it's mass production, you're shooting cows. How great do they have to be? And we'd get a bunch of those out. And then we would put some talcum powder in one of the Garcia Vega tubes and put in 5 or 6 and roll them back and forth and roll them back and forth until they were finely coated with talcum powder. And we'd do that for 3, 4, 5 tubes of paintballs. And it was great. And of course, we eventually told them how we were being able to shoot them 30 yards farther away than their paintballs would even reach. How we could shoot from one side of the lake to the other, and all their paintballs fell into the lake. Of course, we had to let that on. So now pretty soon everybody's got the Garcia Vega tube, and everybody's talcing their balls, and the balls went a hell of a lot straighter and faster and stung harder. Oh, those were some good times. We actually had a regional contest, a regional tournament. We had teams from 4 or 5 states come in and play. Yeah, that was fun. Those are the old days, the early days of survival game. That's what it was still called. And with that trip back down memory lane, I think I'll say I don't have much else to say. Wow, how weird is that? I've gotten some more information about the thing I want to be doing at the University of Cincinnati at the end of March, and I'll be sharing some of that with you next time. It's a D&D and diversity and inclusion. I can't remember the title exactly. It's very scholarly sounding, but that's what it's about. Oh, and I just got done reading a book, and I found out that the lady had written another 5 books about it was a dragon series. And she was, I was reading her thing in the back, and she got into fantasy, playing D&D when she was in grade school. Now she has 6 books published. Amazing. And on that note, I'll say Dodatagovi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.